What's going on, y'all? Today's guest is Jeremy Skaller, co-founder of the Heavy Group. Jeremy is an artist manager, producer, composer, entrepreneur. This was such a fun, inspiring episode. His company, the Heavy Groups, works with artists such as Bazzi, Jay Sean, Kiana Lede, and many more. And as a songwriter and producer, he has worked with artists such as Rihanna, Ariana Grande, Khalid. The list is endless and goes on forever. He has such amazing experience in the industry, such amazing, great insight and tips in this episode on artist management, what makes a good artist manager, what to look for in an artist manager. We talk about the industry today. We talk about all the things that are happening in the world as I was recording, right? COVID-19, the Black Lives Matter movement, and so much more. This is such a fun episode. So as always, take a quick second, subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel right down here below. We also have some time signatures below to what we talk about at different times, link to the show notes there as well. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with the amazing Jeremy Skaller.
Live the life you love.
Tell me a little bit about what is the Heavy Group. So the Heavy Group is your company, and I believe you guys do management and some production and several other services. What are the services that you guys provide for artists?
So the Heavy Group is a sort of full entertainment conglomerate, right? So we run the gamut, right? So we have a management arm in which we have a bunch of artists that we manage both across music and a couple of other spaces. We are a production company and involved in some television production and now some podcast production. Actually, we are, and of course music production, right? And we have some artists also signed to that production company. We are a record label. We have our imprint. Our home is at Republic Records, and we have a bunch of artists signed there. We have a publishing arm as well, with a bunch of young aspiring writer producers signed to that, in development and well on their way. Some of the new initiatives that we've taken on are in the wellness space, where we've been working on sort of meditative initiatives and mental health initiatives as it pertains to mindfulness and wellness and music in particular, and putting sort of our thoughts about how to take care of oneself using music into action. So we have like a label initiative that we're launching along those lines as well. So it really runs the full spectrum of entertainment services, of course, with a focus on music, but art informs art. So we sort of move through every possible medium as smoothly as we can.
Nice. I might take a side tangent in a second with the wellness thing because I'm has personal interest in there. But before I get there, there's a lot of different services and things that you guys offer. What does the team look like for the Heavy Group?
The team is myself. I'm co-founder with Jared Cotter. Jared Cotter is my full-time partner. Jared is a songwriter and former artist himself. He was on top 10 finalist on American Idol, top 12 finalist on American Idol, back during the Jordan Sparks years.
Okay.
And actually, I was producing him, right? So that's how we met. And then he and I continued to work together. We ended up writing and producing a bunch of hit records with Jay Sean, songs like Down, Do You Remember? All the big Cash Money pop hits Jared and I were very involved with. And that relationship sort of stayed and became like the groundwork of and the fundamental basis of what we decided to build from there, which was a management company or a full service company. We don't even like to call ourselves managers. A full service company that really dealt with, the uplifting of artists' needs and desires, hence the Heavy Group. We lift the heavy stuff. Although there's more to it. There's also the Ayn Rand element of shrugging off what society expects you to doesn't expect you to shrug, and taking on what society doesn't expect you to take on. So there's a little bit of that Atlas Shrugged element in there too. that's Jared, right? And then we have Anthony Kronfel, who is a junior partner in the company. And Anthony was an engineer, a mix engineer that I developed for years, mixing records for Jay Sean and engineering sessions for me as a record producer. And I just thought there was more to it for him, and he agreed. That was a really a nice development. He handles like logistics and touring, and he's like an A&R manager in that sense. And then we have Jasmine Collier, who is day-to-day for Kiana Lede. She's a tour manager as well. Jasmine, I met on a video set, on a Sean Paul and Jay Sean video set that I was on a record that I produced years ago. And I just loved her energy. I thought she was so powerful and so filled with light. And I just wanted her on my team. So I sort of like just kept in touch with her. And then as our company grew, I realized that we needed Jasmine, and Kiana had very early on made it very clear that she wanted a woman of color, a Black woman as her day to day. And so I was like, oh my God, Jasmine, I've been waiting for this opportunity for way to put her in play, like so awesome, so it was like a perfect moment. And so they've become like fast friends, and Jasmine's super important for us and like awesome. And then we have other partners, but like that's the core, is the four of us. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's a lot of divisions for four people. Can't imagine what your week looks like. So you mentioned, speaking of taking the heaviness off, you mentioned wellness, mindfulness, and meditation. And I've even seen on your Instagram feed that you've posted some things about meditation. I think, was it Kiana was like part of some class. Tell me a little bit why you feel mindfulness and meditation are important, and what is it that you guys offer, but and also why do you think it's important for the music industry?
Right. Well, there's lots of nuanced, a lot of questions, a lot of answers to that question. There's a lot of angles to look at, but I think we can start at a very basic level, which is, society as a whole vibrates with a very baseline anxiety right now.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is. There's just a baseline anxiety vibration that pretty much everyone feels. If you talk to almost anyone that whether they're creatives or not, how do you feel? People use the word anxious a lot, right? And even if they can't decide that that's the word they want to use, when pushed or discussed, or when the conversation happens, anxiety ends up being the word that people come to, right? So from myself, what I've noticed is, because we're always connected to our devices, phones, Zoom calls, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, right? Because we're listening to podcasts, because we're consuming music at the faster rates. We're at fast rates. We're binging whole seasons of an episode on Netflix in 4 days, which I'm fully guilty of, right? We can go from LA to Miami to New York in 3 days and hit 16 meetings. Like because we're capable of so much now in such a little amount of time. People don't take the time to breathe. They don't take a time to slow themselves down, connect with who they are, why they are doing things, as opposed to what, asking yourself why. And mindfulness helps you define why, because it slows yourself down. It slows you down, and you start asking yourself hard questions like, what? Well, why am I going to Miami? Right? Or why do I need to binge this? What am I not doing instead? Why am I watching, Ozark season 3 in 2 days? Right? So I think what meditation does for me is it gives me a moment, whether it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute, is it gives me a cool down section of my day. Yeah. And from that cool down section, I'm able to, it's no different than working out. You got to take a break, right? You can't just crush in the gym all day long. You have to take a break, right? But even the best athletes in the world, Olympian triathletes, all of them, iron person runners or athletes, NBA basketball players, they all have to take a break. They have an off season. Yeah. And that off season in our daily activities, I find important, is meditation. And that makes me a better partner. It makes me for my artists. It makes me a better partner for my partners. I think it makes me a better person, and it allows me to deal with some of the fundamental issues that our world is facing, and helps me deal with the baseline anxiety that I'm feeling like everyone else is feeling. Not to mention the fact that we're so quick to pop a pill and so quick to or have a drink, or so quick to smoke an L, right? All that kind of stuff. And by the way, if you got to smoke an L to chill out, I get it. But there are other ways, and those ways have existed for thousands of years. And I've found a lot of peace in that. So what I thought for the heavy group was, what if we could start to find initiatives so that our artists could find moments, pockets of peace, right? We call them like little pockets of peace in your day, because then they become better songwriters, better performers. And Kiana meditates before every single performance. If you've ever seen Kiana Lede perform, it is outrageous how good she is.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there are good performers, and then there are like these extraordinary, amazing people like Alicia Keys, or Kiana sits in that space because she takes a minute before every performance and locks herself in mindful. She's like, I can't believe these 2,000 people paid money to see me.
Right.
I am so grateful. Gratitude is a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? I am so grateful. I'm here in this moment with gratitude. I'm going to give them everything. And she does, because she takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and she gets the whole band around her. It's not a prayer. Some people do the prayer thing. I tend to think that the prayer thing just gets thrown out the window half the time. Right. This is I'm here. We are here. Why are we here? To do something specific. And then that specific something gets delivered in an extra special way. So it started with these pockets of peace with our artists, and then some of my very fancy and very fabulous sort of wellness influencer friends like Jay Shetty or Tara Natalie. They started reaching out to the creative community in LA as well, and started having people come to their homes, meditate with them, do yoga with them. It's starting to become a thing where people need to connect because they're so stressed out. It's so difficult to go through our lives at this pace that we go. We don't feed ourselves enough. So that's where that came from. And then Spotify was has all these amazing streaming platform, and all these amazing meditation playlists. So Kiana and I were like, why don't you make a meditation playlist and then host it with Spotify? And then we had Tara Natalie, who's this amazing yogi, Reiki healer out of New York, host an IG Live. 1,200 people showed up for that on IG Live with Kiana,
That's awesome.
So that's that initiative. It's important. It's a side initiative, but it's a healthy initiative. And that's why we give it so much credence and so much importance.
Yeah, I think it's important not just for the creators, and it's also the people working the shows, the people behind the scenes, because they're working these ungodly long days. And I think mindfulness and meditation would do really well for them as well. Do you have any favorite ways to because there's so many styles of meditation and breathing exercises? Do you have any favorite ways that you practice? Or if you were to sit down with someone and take them through a meditation session, what would that look like?
Well, I mean, yes, of course, there are so many very particular schools of meditation. They all have their purpose, and there are masters and there are teachers. I am by no means a teacher, right? I am a big believer in breath work. I find intense breath work to be very effective in slowing down my monkey brain and making me feel connected to where I am in the moment, and then better decisions come out of that. So I will do breath work, whether it's a minute, even right after this podcast, I have another phone call, and I'm going to give myself 1 minute. I'm going to be a minute late for that call, and I'm just going to give myself some breath, some in for 5 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and out for 8 seconds. Okay. And that's a really great way of just slowing down and connecting with your breath. So I would just say there's no right or wrong. Just give yourself a pocket of silence. Give yourself a pocket break, like a pocket vacation. 1 minute, sit down. You don't have to cross legs. You don't have to sit in any yoga pose. You can lay on your back. Just shut your eyes and breathe. and just give yourself that moment. And it's so helpful.
So speaking of people feeling more anxious, right, during these times, there's a lot going on as it is recording. We're dealing with two major crises in our country, or in the world, with COVID-19 and then the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
I guess let's start with COVID first. How has that affected your artists and your company, not just in terms of like the business, but also mentally and physically?
Yeah. Well, I think it was surreal at first, right? Everyone was like, oh yeah, it'll be 2-3 weeks and we'll get the fuck out of here. It'll be no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But like, that didn't happen,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So I think it was cute at first for people to be home. Mm-hmm. Oh, we get to chill. No big deal. Then it became a pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
Then it became downright scary.
Right.
Then it became debilitating to your business.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then somewhere in there in the 3/4 to halfway range, some of us, myself included, started to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Not the pandemic, not the death, not the sickness, not that, but started to feel like, okay, there is a switch happening, there's a shift happening. And so that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is this whole time, all I've been doing as a quote unquote manager is trying to reinvent income streams for my artists. Like, what do we do? Like, we can't tour. Okay, so, let's do a podcast, right? Okay, we can't get a podcast up and running. Okay, well, let's find a brand that wants to sponsor your IG lives. All this, can we do merch drops? Can we really, streaming is still there. People are, can we develop a television show? So all the industry creatives started basically hustling to think of all the ways to, manifest a new destiny while we were dealing with what we thought was going to be our 2020 just sort of crumbling before our right in front of our feet. As we would take a step, it would crumble. It's like walking across a bridge that was crumbling as you walk. It's like a horrible nightmare. So we were very quick to react. We had 2 tours booked that we had to cancel, and Kiana and Bazzi we had to push. Jay Sean had an India and South Asian tour that we had to push. All of his club dates dried up. All of his DJ dates dried up. Kiana's whole U.S. and she had her debut album drop right in the middle of a pandemic. And we celebrated that because it was amazing, but we lost television. We didn't have television. We didn't have traditional radio. We couldn't go on a promo run. All of the things that you would press interviews. We didn't fly to New York. We didn't go to Atlanta. We didn't, we didn't even do any interviews in LA. It all became like what we now live with Zoom and IG Live. And we had to get moving quick, and the record labels had to move fast. And I think people by and large, did a pretty good job. I think this industry, people are used to working at home a lot. I think as a record producer, I'm totally comfortable in my studio by myself for hours and days. Give me coffee and some, and a couple bagels, and I'm probably okay,
Yeah.
But then it started to be like, well, how do I, as an artist, how do I make myself matter if I'm a new artist? How do I break? I can't tour. I can't open for Billie Eilish. I can't, right? And then of course, the underlying anxiety of a pandemic affects artists probably as much, if not more so than anybody. I mean, artists are the canary in the coal mine, right? Where the artists are the ones that are gonna notice that the oxygen is getting low quicker than everybody else. I mean, I believe that. Right. So that was a really stressful sort of transition in that, like, okay, so we know how to do interviews. We know how to go on IG Live. But then suddenly all these brands were like, let's use artist X to raise money for COVID victims in communities that got hit hard, or and sure, super important stuff. But nobody was calling the artist saying, we have this fund for you. You're getting hit hard too, Music Cares did what it could do, but we expect them to do what they could do, right? So the artists were leaned on very heavily, if you remember. I mean, without IG Live and all the amazing DJs and versus competitions
Right.
and Teddy Riley against Babyface and
Yeah.
all the amazing moments. Without that stuff, it would have been very bleak for us, right? As I guess civilians, right? It would have been very, very bleak.
Absolutely.
So that's been a complicated thing to deal with. And now that we're still in the middle of it, we don't really know where it's going to go. We don't know where touring's going to be. And, we know that we've moved Kiana to 2021 touring, right? The end of 2021 looks like, or at least after the summer.
Right.
And then what's touring going to look like? Is it going to be, are we going to go back to arenas and stadiums? I probably not, right?
Like for a while.
So then think about that for a second. So the Weeknd says, I got a tour. And then Live Nation says, or whoever says, well, you can't do stadiums. So the Weeknd then says, the team says, well, then I want to do 1,000 cap rooms in Toronto, but I want to book 20 dates in a row.
Right. Residency.
Okay. Residency. But what does that do to the artists that aren't the Weeknd? That actually can max out at 1,000.
Right.
Suddenly now those rooms aren't available because the big artists are now going to have to come down to the artists that Kiana needs. I mean, that's where my brain is thinking. And
do you see that happening? Artists doing residencies? Because I've heard some different debates around that from agents and people in the side.
If Kiana's shrinking her room sizes and or Bazzi's doubling or tripling up, or if Jay Sean is, if that level of artist, I mean, Bazzi's bigger than that in terms of his ticket cap for sure.
Right.
But if that conversation's happening for us with Team Bazzi and the rest of that management team, that my whole team, then for sure it's happening with Ariana and Bieber. Of course it is.
Yeah.
And if you're, Club X in Detroit and you have the opportunity of hosting, 9 consecutive dates with Nav at an 800 cap, or an artist that maybe doesn't sell out one,
right.
You know what you're going to go with.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So I think this is a really interesting thing, and I'm not an agent and I'm not, the promoters. So I'm sure there are conversations happening every day that I'm not privy to, but as my manager brain and my touring brain, that's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can definitely see residencies being a thing that's going to happen. And it'll be interesting to see who starts it. And like you said, it's really going to take away the inventory that smaller artists have, because they won't have a place to play, and venues are already starting to disappear. So there's even fewer options of venues. What are some things that like independent artists can do that maybe don't have a team such as yourself? Like, what are ways that they could pivot? I've seen a lot of people doing the Facebook lives and Instagram lives. But what are some that they can do during times like these?
Yeah. Well, I mean, thankfully, we live at a time where you can reach 100 million people via social media.
Yeah.
So there is a silver lining. Like, it's not all doom and gloom, or gloom and doom, or whatever the saying is, right? I think it's important to not dwell too much on nostalgia and look back at, well, if this was the 90s, we would, right? We're not there. We're here. And we have TikTok.
Right.
And records are breaking off TikTok at a pace, right? So, I mean, most of the songs in the Billboard Hot Top 10 are records that, reacted on TikTok.
Right.
So that doesn't necessarily require touring.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
We have Spotify, there's Apple, there's Tidal, there's all of these platforms there's YouTube, all these amazing platforms that you can tap into as a songwriter, as an artist, as a producer, as in general, as a creator. And you can monetize what you make, right?
Yeah.
And at the very least, you can promote what you make, right?
Yeah.
And kids are very savvy now, and viral trends happen. So I would say, if I was an independent artist and I was looking to make a splash, nothing's changed, because most independent artists aren't touring anyway.
Right. Yeah.
It's too expensive.
It's true. As mindfulness and like meditation, like those things being kind of like a part of the foundation of what, like, who you are and like what you instill in your artists. Do you think something like this will can help us as a world, as a society, be more mindful. And because like touring, for example, I used to work on the touring side, so I was one of the victims of the AEG layoff as of this week. But
oh man, I'm sorry about that, bro.
that's all right. I think better things are coming. I've got a lot of exciting things in the works. Stay
Great.
positive, move forward. But thank you. So touring takes a lot of wear and tear on the body. I see it every day on the musicians, on
Sure.
the touring personnel, especially those that are touring 150, 200 days a year. And if you're doing that many shows, it's not just the show days, there's the travel days as well. So it's so much wear and tear. Do you feel like something like this can, one, make artists more, like, and their teams be more creative on revenue streams and maybe even like take them off the road? Like not having to play as much when things go back online?
Well, there's so many levels of this conversation, like
Right.
rethinking wealth, rethinking money, rethinking how much money you need to make to be successful.
Right.
Rethinking. I mean, we can have a whole Bernie Sanders conversation if you want. I'm a big Bernie fan, right?
Yeah.
Like,
you go 2-3 hours.
Yeah, right. I think touring is important. You got to bring your music to the people.
Right.
Touching people, physically touching people, and also talk about meditation. What's more meditative? I mean, I come from a touring background too. I was in a band that toured in the 90s. I did 200 shows a year for 8 years. So I know all about sitting in a fucking Dodge van, 50 passenger van, thrifty rental van, and, traveling from Norfolk, Virginia to New York overnight, to Boston, to Maine, to Burlington, Vermont, to Toronto, to Montreal, to Toronto, to Detroit, to Chicago. Like, that I did my whole life. With
glamorous life.
And you can't replace that,
right?
Because the touching people in their home in a live environment is magic. I mean, we all know that concerts are magic, right?
Absolutely.
You can't replace that magic of the shared experience and the collective unconsciousness of a crowd of people all screaming along at the top of their lungs to a Metallica record. I see that behind you. You know what I mean? To jam or whatever it might be. Imagine replacing I saw Donald Glover, Childish Gambino at Coachella last year.
So good.
And like, oh my God, I always liked him, of course. Like, yay, fucking fabulous performer, fabulous artist. But then seeing him live in that setting, I was just so blown away at the level of thought and level of dedication, and how much feeling and how much, what I said, like, he meant it. He means it.
Yeah.
Right. That's a guy that knows why he's performing, right? He knows why. So you can't replace that. Okay. So that's one thing. That's a sad loss if we lose that. Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know what you do in that instance. IG Live is cute. It's fun, but I don't think we're replacing the feeling of seeing Sade or Kendrick live anytime soon.
I agree completely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get that question a lot too. Because VR is becoming more of a thing now, and will virtual reality concerts like replace the real life experience? And I always say I think it might be in addition to what artists are doing. But so I always often talk about the 12 stages of intimacy, which is more like originally came from like relationships, like romantic relationships, but now business people use it, the first 10 steps for business. And it makes sense. Like, so the 10 stages, like for those that don't know that are listening, I walk into a room, I see a person, I see them. Then we make eye contact, we see each other, and then we have a conversation. And that's where it stops virtually. So like right now, you and I can't tap you on the shoulder or give you a high five right now or put my arm around you. Like, you lose that experience, and only at a concert can you put your arm around your best friend and hold a beer up and scream on the top of your lungs. I don't think live is ever going to go away because it's just such a more transformative, magical experience.
Yeah, and then it creates little moments of nostalgia for you as you get older. That people can like trace their personal lineage back to to all the way back to like 8th or 9th grade when they maybe saw their first show or went to their first club or had their first live experience. Right. Those are moments you can't replicate. And I mean, I have an Oculus, and I'm looking at it closely, mostly from a meditation perspective,
Right.
the future of Oculus and augmented and virtual reality in that space. That's very interesting to me. But the music side of things, yeah, let's see how good it gets.
Right.
But you know, if there's 12 stages of intimacy, then there's, I don't know how many steps there are, but there's probably a certain amount of steps of forget,
Right.
of loss.
Yeah.
And if we don't come back to performance long enough, for a long time, people will forget that feeling, and they will replace that feeling with whatever else simulates it, comes close to it, approximates it, right? And I find myself, you know, now in my 40s, you know, thinking about a lot of things in that way. What are the things that we've lost over the last 25, 30 years? And what are the things that we've gained by being stuck inside? Interesting, for the last 4 months, some of the things that we've gained, like, what a fascinating idea that it took a pandemic for people to realize that, you know, they didn't need, you know, 7 cars or 15 pairs of Balenciagas or,
Right.
or all of that stuff. And I, you know, people are into fashion. Great, be into fashion. But I think there's just a way to be responsible about it. Like, so we don't, you know, so we can be mindful of what we do have. So we're not going through all the stages of loss that I don't know how many there are, but
Right.
probably like as many stages of grief, whatever that philosophy is. But you know, so the pandemic has been in it, back to that original question. The pandemic, COVID-19 has really forced people to check themselves on an emotional level, on a what do I need level to survive, right? What was irrelevant that I thought was so important, you know? So interesting. You know, right when the pandemic hit, I had the brand new iPhone sent to my house. And I haven't even switched over yet. Why? I have it just sitting there in a box. I'm going to do it
really
eventually.
Yeah.
I didn't really need it. So stupid of me. Maybe if Apple would stop messing with my existing phone as they roll other ones out, but that's a whole conspiracy theory we can get into another time. But, you know, it's right here. It doesn't even look. You know? So I just haven't touched it. It's actually in the spot that I opened it and left it there, you know? So, so that's been an interesting thing. And I think artists have found that true, you know, like as well, like who are your team? Who's your team? Who's your real team? You know, who's your squad? I think I would imagine artists have really figured that out now. Who are the stragglers that you didn't need? Who are the tag-alongs that like vanished? Who did you not want to see? Oh man, I bet you there's a 1,000,001 stories of like some dude that used to be around all the time in some clique that or some crew or some team and like is not there now because the team was like, no, we actually didn't like that person.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But it takes a break. It takes a mini break to understand what you do and what you don't like. If we're just rushing all the time. So COVID gave people a chance to give, I mean, listen, there's lots of problems. People are dying, communities that are hard hit. Like, I get it. It is, and it's not easy for the music business. If touring represents 75% of our income stream, how do you replace that? Can you replace it? And now we're back to the Bernie conversation. Do we need to replace it? Like, do we actually need that much money? And there's a lot of these things that I think the socialist conversation could be had. Interestingly enough, you know,
so many different directions I could go from here. But since I did mention Black Lives Matter, you know, it's something that's obviously really big at the time that I was recording, and so hopefully will make a positive change, like a permanent positive change in our country and in our world. And I know I don't know what it feels like to be discriminated at that level, but I've dealt with some level of discrimination for being mixed race, for having Tourette syndrome. I don't know if you've heard, but I make like this sound. So I faced some form of discrimination, and I feel like the music industry is probably one of the last ones that's actually changing. There's so much of that still happening in the music industry. There's so many like Black artists, and then like white people that are on the business side that are in charge of everything. Even the companies I've worked for, it was mostly white. And it's something that I would love to see change in our industry, to be different and become better and lead by example, because people look up to the artists that we represent and that we work with. And if they knew some of the things that go on behind the scenes, I think they would be really disappointed.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah. And that's an understatement. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you feel this is hopefully going to change the music industry, and what's some changes that you would like to see in the music industry?
You know, I think what this has done, again, for me in my 40s, protesting has changed. The way people can get information, the way that they can speak their mind, say their piece, make their points. It's fast, it's powerful, it's direct. It can be very combative in a great way. And I would say first start off by saying, and I made this statement very early on my own personal Instagram page, as a record producer, I built my career with Black music. I'm fully aware of it, and grateful for all my mentors and everyone that I came up with. I came from Burlington, Vermont, in a jam band to New York City in the late '90s, early 2000s, and instantly locked in with started with Wu-Tang, and was in that sort of crew, and then my partner at the time was an engineer for Wu-Tang, so I was always around them, and I replayed some samples and was for the engineers that were part of that crew, and I was always around that, and I helped lift boxes to help build 36 Chambers, the recording studio. So that was the start, and then I went from there to work with Desert Storm, DJ Clue and Duro and Fab and Lil Mo, and then from there with Jay Sean, Cash Money. Right. It was like from a Black music crew to Black music crew, right? By the way, not using the word urban because that's a word that I've always hated. And I love the fact that Republic Records has taken that initiative to sort of remove the word urban from their lexicon. Nice. It's just a pointless word, and it's offensive on so many levels. Assumes that all Black people live in cities, that none of them grow up in the country. It assumes that by the way, it's so ridiculous that I could say something like, by the way, Depeche Mode or New Order are urban acts because they because London-based acts are urban. It's London, it's a city, right? So it's just ridiculous. How many amazing punk bands were formed in urban centers, right? So they shove Black music into this urban, you must be from the hood, so therefore it's urban, right? So it just was always fucking ridiculous and so stupid. And I am so happy that word is changing, and words freaking matter. Yeah, and absolutely. And as I also wrote early on, we're in the music business. We're literally surrounded by master songwriters and lyricists. Our words should really matter because it's the best writers in the world are here. People writing all the best shit. Yeah. And so that's good change. Yes, for sure. It's small, but it's good. But what I was going back to about saying about the way people protest, the way people speak their minds, what it's been for me, and I'm really only going to speak from my experience because I think that's the most important way, impactful way to enact the right kind of change that has been so fucking long in coming. Yeah. And I hope that, and I pray, and I'm hopeful, and I think it will continue to get some real action out of the conversation. But for me, it's become conversation. So people's Instagram feeds changed overnight, and so many brilliant friends of mine are posting such incredible, it's like ammunition. It's like bullets it's like knowledge bullets, and if you take a couple of seconds, even if you are, I'll come from the most 60s liberal family. My parents were hippies, civil rights marches. all of that, you know, I grew up amongst all of that stuff. I mean, not in the 60s, but later on, I was a product of that family, you know, but, you know, reading a whole book on something was something you did in school, and you had to choose to read it because it wasn't really being taught, right? So now what's happening is all of these amazing posts, these knowledge bullets are being fired. And if you just catch them and spend the time and read them, your brain explodes with information. And then that information informs action. And then that action informs more information. And then suddenly you're in this like fabulous discourse about a topic that you thought you knew some shit about. I'm talking as a Jewish man, right? Like that I thought I knew some shit about. And you come to find that you know very little, and your heart can be in the right place and your actions can be what you thought were right. But at the end of the day, if you're not paying attention to these knowledge bullets, you're sort of talking the same way that people have been talking for years, right? So the way that I've been dealing with this, and the way that clearly, I mean, you know, the heavy group, my partner is Black, and he is an activist, and he's married to Melanie Fiona, who is an incredible Black and Guyanese R&B singer, and they have a child together. So he's on the front lines, literally on the front lines, you know. And then we have Kiana Lede, who has always been an activist from day one. I mean, if Kiana sees injustice anywhere, in line at the supermarket, she's going at it.
I love it.
And she goes at it with knowledge bullets. She is educated about the stuff, and she works on getting more educated. Like she's not just talking. She's actually giving information and knowledge. So that's been, for me, such a powerful awakening to know that there's so much important information that I must take in, that I must then, after I take in, talk to people about. You know, that's been what this has been recently. And of course, it spurs the larger conversations about, you know, political power and Donald Trump and, you know, and all of that terrible shit that affects artists too. I mean, let's talk about, we're still talking about artists in the artist community. I mean, artists haven't been supported ever. Right? You know, true. So imagine you're a Black artist, you're getting hammered, you're doubly hammered. You know, imagine you're a woman Black artist. Now you're getting hammered 3 times. Now let's say that you're gay, Black, and female, and you're an artist. Now you've been hammered 4 times by the system, right? Like, it's just got to stop, man. We just have to, like, we have to remove every smack has to be removed. Like, it just has to stop, you know? So eye-opening, powerful, super important, and certainly the focus of what we're doing now at the Heavy Group. I mean, how could we not be led by Kiana and by Jared and by Melanie? How could we not be led by them? I mean, we have to. We have to fall in line behind them and support.
And as you said, there's so many amazing articles and so many like knowledge bullets that people are posting and sharing. And it's interesting because like some of the smallest things, right? So like one of you guys' focus is on mindfulness, and you know, mindfulness to me is also trying to understand and really understand and feel what the other person is feeling and what they're going through. And you know, something as simple as like posting hashtag all lives matter. Like, it's not that people are saying all lives don't matter, but like really understanding what that means and using that at this moment when it's not about that right now.
It's a very clear distinction, and anyone that doesn't understand that needs to really figure it out quick, because it's not that all lives don't matter. It's that Black lives need to matter. And then all lives will matter. You know, exactly. It's like, you know, you don't just get to make the blanket claim because Black lives don't matter yet. They need to. That's the meaning. They fucking matter clearly, but to the society, to the political system, they have not mattered, and therefore the argument of, well, all lives matter is just fucking ridiculous to me, and just makes me feel like all these, like, I mean, I'm super liberal, but like all of these like uber liberals are just like, oh, but all lives matter.
Right.
Listen, your kumbaya shit can wait,
Yeah.
right?
Let's fix this first.
First, let's fix this first, And there was a really interesting article my friend Chris Anacute posted today. And I've known Chris for years and years. I mean, so many years when he was a junior A&R, and he gave me one of my first shots in the business. And like I said, man, I owe so much to the Black music community, like my whole career, man,
Mm-hmm.
But Chris posted this article where he said, if you're a white music executive, read this,
Mm-hmm.
And I read it, and it's just stuff that I inherently know, that I've always known, but it was so great to read it. Like, how many times have I sat in a record label or in a touring office or in an agency with a Black artist, and their agents or their reps or their A&R or their marketing executives aren't Black.
Right.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to name the agency, but Kiana Lede and Heavy Group took her off of her agency because she came to us and said, I sit at that table and nobody is representing me
Right.
at that table. And then we took her to a new agency, and that new agency is so diverse and so fabulous. And like, you're right. And it was instantly, we just sat at our first meeting was like, women, Black executives, and all of every array of diversity that she needed to see was there. So, I mean, the White Music Executive Roundtable, I mean, there are people in this business that have been working, I mean, whatever, I'm not going to call any names out right now because that's not nice, but the system has kept people in business that shouldn't have jobs.
Right.
For years and years. There are A&Rs and CEOs and all these people that sort of jump from label to label. They have not made change. They have not done great things. I mean, for years and years, people that maybe had a hit in the 90s or developed one huge act in 2003, but somehow get recycled into positions of more and more power at new record labels 15 years after they've had added any value to the music business. And that happens for white executives exclusively.
Right.
Exclusively. And by the way, white male executives exclusively.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know any female female executives that are white in the music business that like had a bad couple of years and survived that.
Yeah.
It's
true. Very true.
So I've been watching that my whole life and sitting in rooms being like, what is this? This is terrible. So bad, Yeah.
I've heard this interview with Wendy Day from Rap Coalition. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she talks about this, how labels have taken advantage of Black artists because they're using all this language in their contracts, and they're taking away their masters and all these things that are kind of screwing the artists over. And didn't even have like a lawyer look at this, and she kind of helps advocate for these artists to help them get out of their record deals, because there's so much shady stuff that's happening and still happening.
My one of my primary babysitters when I was a kid, living outside of Philadelphia, was Chubby Checker, one of Chubby Checker's daughters.
Oh wow, that's cool.
And Chubby Checker sold his publishing for a car.
Wow.
Gave away his publishing for a car.
Wow.
Like, whatever
one goes
lawyer,
up, one goes down in value.
whatever lawyer did that deal, I don't know if that was ever forgiven. I don't know the full history. I should look into that, but I remember that story. There are probably so many stories like that. I know there are stories like that. Listen, we tried, the Heavy Group, we've always done this because I'm an artist. Jared was an artist. We were artists first. We've always tried to do really creative, like fair, appropriate deals with our artists. There are so many times when we don't commission something because the value wasn't great enough and the artist needs to survive. I mean, we do this all the time. Right. I mean, that's not to applaud us. That's to point out that that's just what you need to do. Yeah. Right. And yeah, Black artists have been taken advantage of for years, and the record labels need to figure that out, and they need to figure out what that means retroactively. I don't have an answer for that,
Yeah.
I'm consumed with getting it right at this moment. But at some point, there needs to be a retroactive conversation, because I am quite sure there are terrible estate battles happening right now between some like white lawyer, right, and a black family that says, yeah, but that's our dad's legacy, or mom's legacy.
Yeah. Very true.
I'm sure that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had the facts on that. That's actually, I'm going to do that after this. I'm going to go look up existing litigation, on legacy artists, from black music, to see like what they're fighting to get if they're fighting to get their masters. Interesting conversation.
Yeah, I have to check that out too. Speaking of interesting conversations, this time has gone by really fast, and I have lots of questions still for you. So maybe we can do.
I can go a little over if you want. You can go a little over if you want. I got a text saying I pushed my other call, so just ask away. We can go into it if you need.
So a quick little story. You've mentioned Cash Money a couple of times. I used to work for House of Blues in New Orleans, and there's this couch that's still there. I've seen it last time I went, and Baby and Lil Wayne sat in that couch years ago when they first started Cash Money, and were pitching to my old boss and mentor to book them at House of Blues in the big room, and that they were doing something that he would want to be a part of. And he booked the first show, and I think they sold like 400 tickets. And then after that, every show they've ever done since sold out. So it's pretty cool to be part of.
Amazing.
To see that history.
I mean, Cash Money is such an interesting story. I mean, look, Cash Money's got its own problems, and I've had my fair share of issues with them on not being paid as a songwriter, and as a producer, and that's led us down legal battles. But I have a endless amount of respect for what Baby and Slim did, because talk about being told no. The whole business laughed them out. Every label laughed them out the door. You want to own your masters? You want a record label? Yourself? You go back to New Orleans and sell records out of the back of your car, And we can't even understand you when you speak because you don't talk like us. Like all of this shit. Mm-hmm. And Russell Simmons talks about it in one of his books. I can't remember which book, but there was a big moment when I read that. It's actually a crazy serendipitous moment. I was reading this chapter about Cash Money in a Russell Simmons book, and Slim called me the next day. I never met Slim before. Mm-hmm. So unbelievable circumstances there. But, they built an empire in a world that didn't want them to succeed at all.
Right.
And I understand why, on a lot of levels, why they are so protective, and why they are family first, and why they keep their people around them. I have nothing but respect and endless love for Baby and Slim and Wayne and what they built. That doesn't take away the fact that they need to pay their songwriters and producers, because that's not fair either. Right. And they need to pay they need to take care of their artists, because they didn't take care of Wayne either. But that's a much larger conversation. But just knowing what it takes as a Jewish man to build a successful entertainment company, which is a fraction of their success.
Right.
How hard it was for me. I can't even imagine how hard it was for Baby and Slim. Unbelievable. They must be so much smarter than everyone else that I know that you can't even quantify it.
Right.
There's no way to quantify how intelligent Slim is. You can't, because he's done everything that huge record labels have done, with them all saying, "Now you can't do it."
Right.
It's an unbelievable story, man. I just fucking love that about them.
So, shifting a little bit, I want to get into artist management real quick. What makes someone a good artist manager? So someone that wants to get into artist management, a lot of students that want to be managers and manage artists. What advice would you give to them on what would make someone a good manager, and what quality should an artist look for in a manager?
Empathy.
I love it.
Empathy, bro. You have to love the artists you work with. Mm-hmm. You have to really love them. It can't be about how much money am I going to make. Right. You can chase an artist because they're hot. You can sign an artist because they're hot. And 18 months after you get that deal done, that artist is going to look at you and say, "You signed me because I was hot." You don't fucking give a shit.
Right.
because artists always know.
Mm-hmm.
That's their job.
Right.
An artist's job is to see the truth, tell the truth,
Yeah.
right?
I
In
love it.
whatever format, whatever medium they choose to tell it in, they are telling the truth. So a good manager is a manager that leads with his heart. You can look at the analytics, you can look at the metrics, you can look at how exciting it is, but at the end of the day, you have to care, you have to love, you have to feel like that artist is your muse, you know? Like, Scooter loves Justin Bieber.
Right.
You know it.
Yeah.
You know he loves Ariana. You know he loves his clients.
Mm-hmm.
He is as tough as it comes.
Right.
And it's brilliant, right? And probably opportunistic in some ways, right? But you can't question his love. It's not possible.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
True.
not. And I would bet you every successful manager that ever hears this podcast is going to say, yep. Like, imagine being, let's talk about it. Who wasn't a good manager for Amy Winehouse?
Right. Yeah. I forgot.
Right.
That's something about that story recently.
Right. That's an interesting conversation to have. Now, I wasn't there.
Right.
But it's an interesting thing to look at. Right. Who, what manager has, Jared and I have a very serious stance. Like, we've had relationships with artists and producers, and we manage not just artists, but songwriters and producers and such. And we always talk about ourselves. Like, what if one of our artists goes down a dark path, like drugs or alcohol or whatever? Are we going to be the kind of management team that just like takes the paycheck and shuts up?
Right.
Fuck no.
No.
No way. You must have empathy. You must speak to your artist as if you might get fired. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think most of my partners, most of the artists that I've worked with, I don't like calling them clients. It's a weird word. And sometimes it slips because words matter.
Right.
But this is like indoctrinated into me that it's like they're clients, whatever. But I would imagine that most of my partners would say that I generally just say it like it is. And I don't sugarcoat it too much. And when I make mistakes, it's because I'm sugarcoating it.
Right.
When I don't hold a fine line, when I don't hold my firm line about what I actually really think, they can smell it too.
Yeah.
Right? Authenticity is everything. It's everything in music too. Like, what artist do you want to listen to that isn't authentic? Like, nobody.
Right.
And kids are smart today. They can smell inauthentic music like instantly.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's such a strong and powerful point, like with the empathy part, right? Because and recognizing when your artist might be going down a dark path, because like the Amy Winehouse story, if you're going down a dark path and your manager's pushing you to just play this next show or finish this tour, like just suck it up. Like that's so damaging to an artist. It's so dangerous.
It is. It's very damaging. It's very difficult. It's tricky. It's a tricky conversation. And then also you have to know when to push an artist to finish. Right? That's tricky too.
Right. It's a fine line.
A fine line. You have to know. You have to know when the dollar doesn't matter. And when the joy matters most. By the way, it always matters most, but you have to know when it really matters,
Right.
I would say that if you're looking for a good manager, look for somebody that is empathetic and that you trust, that you believe, that feels authentic to you. And then look for that version of that person who understands, the game.
Yeah. Yep. I love it. What is something that artists can do to find a manager, like attract a manager like that? So the question I'm asking is, are there any guidelines of things that someone can work on? So an agent friend of mine was on a podcast recently, and he gave me like specific guidelines of things to work towards. Of course, at the end of the day, music is all that matters, but his guidelines for his agency is artists should be able to make $100,000 a year from touring. Artists should have 2-year tour history. Artists should be able to sell 200 tickets in their hometown plus 100 tickets in 8 other markets. So some just guidelines of something that they can work towards. What would be some guidelines that you would give artists to kind of work towards so they know they're making progress and they're tracking the right key performance indicators?
Well, number one is don't be precious. Put your music out.
Yeah.
As a manager, there's nothing that I hate more as a manager than getting presented with something that looks really great, sounds really great, talks really great, and then having that conversation with the artist. And I'm like, okay, so what's your fan base look like? What, oh, I haven't put the music out. Okay. So it's important to release music. Don't be precious. The people will speak. That's an indicator.
Yep.
Algorithms and all that kind of stuff is real. It's not as political as it used to be. Records blow up for free all the time. If you are upset about the fact that you are not famous, that's because you're not putting out enough music, or because the records you have put out haven't connected yet. But records connect out in the middle of nowhere. There are so many songs that blow up on TikTok every day that aren't from famous artists, right? So don't get caught up in the race. Don't look left, don't look right. You're going to trip. If you're running a race and you look at your person you're running against, you're going to trip. So don't look left, don't look right. Just run forward, right? So running forward means put out music, put out content, find your voice, own your socials. What's your aesthetic? What's your brand? How do you feel? By the way, I don't love the word brand because we're talking about human beings, but what's a better way to think of that? I don't know, what's your style, bro? What do you stand for? Who are you, right? Who are you? That's the way. If I can tell who you are from looking at your social media and listening to your songs on Spotify or Apple or Pandora or whatever it's going to be, that gives you a much higher success rate with someone like me.
With the,
that make sense?
Yeah. With the branding thing, where my mind went is what I always teach in class is branding is when you mention an artist's name or a celebrity's name or a person's name. What do you think of that?
Yes.
You hear them, and that's really branding. It's your actions. So it's not really focusing too much. I mean, it's important what colors are you using in your graphics and what does your logo look like. That stuff's important, but at the end of the day, your actions are your brand.
Yes, exactly. And by the way, I have a really great litmus test that I run all the time with people. So artist X comes to me and says, oh man, no one's paying attention to my music. It's not working. I've been doing it for 5 years. No one cares. Fuck, this system is rigged. Okay. I ask them to close their eyes and I say, tell me what Lil Wayne looks like. Braids and tattoos. Okay. All right. Tell me about Bruno Mars. What do you picture when you shut your eyes and see Bruno Mars? They see the hat, right? What was it? It was a Kangol, right? Or was it? It was a Kangol, and dancing, right? Instantly connected, right? Okay, close your eyes and what do you see in your eyes when you think of Pink? Well, people think of her pink hair. Right? As silly as that is, right? Yeah. So, right, you understand? So there is a thing that you can do. What do you think what do you think of Neo from Year of the Gentleman? Oh, well, he had that cane. Right. You see? So these, shut your eyes. You think of Alicia Keys. What do you think of? Piano. Right. Shut your eyes. What do you think of when you think of Gary Clark Jr.? Guitar. What do you think of when you think of The Roots? Oh, Questlove. When you think of Questlove, what do you think of? You think of the pick coming out of his hair. Right. Right? I mean, it goes on. I haven't done this in a minute, so my brain isn't as limber as it normally is about but it is an interesting conversation when you start to build the what does it look, smell, touch, taste like tree, right? Right. And how does that, and who are you in that? Right. Where are your roots? What is it? And then what does the tree look like? Where are the branches going? These are important things to think about. If you can't tell me what that artist looks, tastes, talks, sounds, feels like, right? Then that artist is probably struggling.
Yeah, very true. I love it. So the interview before this episode is going to come out. It's going to be with Camille Barbone, who's the person that discovered, developed, and managed Madonna, and managed her for the first 4 years of her career. And one of the ways she met her was she opened a studio in New York, which is in a building that Madonna used to, like, I guess, sleep at. She didn't like live there, but she would just she was like homeless. And it's so she discovered Camille, and Camille, they discovered each other, and then they started working together. And the reason she had the studio is because she felt as a manager it added an asset, and she thought it was important for managers to have assets because artists need studio time. And the studio time is expensive. I need to have access as much as possible to a studio to constantly write music and produce music. So that was really important to her. So for you, as someone that is a producer and a songwriter, you have a studio. How has that helped with your company and how much you can contribute to your artist careers?
I mean, it's endlessly helpful.
Yeah.
Having a recording studio can cut budgets, helps with the record labels. We charge a fraction of what to use our studio for our artists of what they would pay if they were using a similar quality level studio at a major studio. Like, our budgets stretch forever, infinite budgets, because we don't charge a lot, you know? And because we're all creatives, I can get in the room and I can, you know, I can work on the record if I need to. I don't do that very often anymore, but I think having creative services and a creative outlet is crucial today. Right. You know, just being an analytics company or just a, you know, like a traditional management company of like contracts and ideas. I think you got to get down and dirty today with your artists.
I love that. Yeah. Do you have any like last like tips or advice for the young student out there or the young artist that are just starting or they're early in their career on how to navigate this crazy industry that we're in that has so many different areas and layers and levels? What advice would you give them to get started?
Well, there's the esoteric side, which is be yourself, do what you love, show that you love it, be uncompromising in what you love. And if people believe you and they like what you're doing, they'll come to you. That's, you know, what is that great Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come.
Yep.
Right? Right. Oh, it's such a beautiful movie. Okay, right. So that's one. That's like the more, like I said, the more esoteric, spiritual type way to look at it, right? Self-manifestation, right? Manifest what you want people to see, and then they will come. Yeah. On the more practical side of things, build your socials, get your numbers up, get the way, you know, figure out how to use TikTok, how to use these tools, these unbelievably powerful tools. Don't be afraid of them. Don't say, oh God, TikTok. It's there for you. It's there for you to figure out the flip, to be an artist with. Every great artist knows how to look at anything and make it into art. You know? I mean, how many times have you all of us have a friend that can cook, and all of us have had, probably most of us have been broke. And how many times have we as broke friends had that friend that somehow made a feast out of like nothing, right? Just yummy food out of like some ramen and some hot sauce and whatever it is, you know, whatever. Like, same thing. Use the tools at your disposal. Use the things. Make something with what you're given. You have more ways to reach people today than ever before. You can reach them on Spotify, on Apple, on Pandora, on Tidal, on Deezer, on YouTube Music, on Amazon, on, oh my God, it goes on. You can reach them on TikTok, on Triller, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, right? Like, you can reach them on OnlyFans. You can reach them on Patreon. Patreon. You can reach them on Vimeo. I mean, there is no excuse.
So true.
Make your shit. Be proud of it. Own it. Be honest with it, and then point people to it. One person becomes 2, 2 becomes 5, 5 becomes 8, 8 becomes 50. Now you have a fan base.
I love it. I also love when you said earlier that not to get, I guess, romantic with the whole release strategy.
Not to get precious.
Precious, yeah. With releasing music, it's just You just got to put it out there and let the market decide. Like, it's not, at the end of the day, if you want to build a career and you want to build a fan base, it's not up to you to decide this song is good and this song isn't. Put it out there, because sometimes the song that you thought was crap might surprise you.
100%. Too many songs come out of nowhere these days.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then, so before I ask you the last question, I just want to take a quick moment. I could have gone for hours, had a lot more questions ready for you, but this was such a fun conversation. I'm glad we met. Thanks for the message that you put out there into the world and how you're making the music community better and our industry better. So thanks so much for that and for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to my imperfect explanations of what it is I'm trying to do. I'll get better at it with time.
we're always students. And then the question I ask at the end is, what's your definition of making it?
Being happy, bro. Being happy, man. Nothing else fucking matters. Anyone else that tells you anything matters are full of shit. They don't know anything. That's about as real as I'm gonna get.
I love it.
Success in making it is being happy.